Hey, what's going on, everybody? Happy Friday. I am here with my good friend Scott Peper of Mobilization Funding. And Scott, we met in RTA, what, 4 years ago, 5 years ago?
Yeah, man, August 2019. I
Yeah.
remember we were hunting those hills up in Lake
Coeur
Coeur
d'Alene.
d'Alene. Yeah,
Yep. Yeah. And since then, I think we both did 75 hard, like, what, four times, five times?
yeah. I've done 75 hard at least. Well, I've done it the full 75 hard two times, and I've done the some of the 30-day protocols probably three or four other times.
There you go. So give
Yep.
us a little bit of a background on how you ended up in fintech or lending.
Well, you know what, man? The best thing I can tell you about this version of this story is that I my fear of loss is about the biggest motivator I've ever come across because I got a phone call from a friend of mine. His name's Kondo. Kondo calls one day in 2013 and says, "Hey, man, I got this great idea. I met this guy Abe and another guy Matt, and they got this idea where we can like the downturn is starting to come about. There's a ton of construction. They're doing all this infrastructure financing, the government stimulus, and the companies in the construction world. If they survived, they have some significant opportunity, but they have an impaired balance sheets. They don't have enough working capital to get approved for these bonds. So
Yeah.
this bonding companies want to put these bonds out, but they need somebody to help on the working capital component, and we're going to be that working capital component. I'm like, okay. Well, what about like in what way and how you do? Well, it's going to be in the form of a loan.
Yeah.
And I said, man, you got to be insane. That is like the dumbest idea I've ever heard in my life because I grew up with my dad had a construction company and I understood construction. I understood the cash flow concerns and pain points. But despite all that, I just didn't, if they were on to something fantastic, I didn't want to, miss out.
Yeah.
So that's how I got into it. First few years started as a hobby. The next few years started out learning a lot of things about partners. So let's just take that whole story to another day. But let's just say I'm the only partner left
Yeah.
and have been only partner in that business for really the majority of 8 years. Now, that said, one of my current partners now, Matt, is still involved in the business and always has been. He plays a key role. But as far as in the business, the original person called me Kondo and the original idea, this guy, Abe, and Matt and I both came in from Kondo. Matt and I are the only ones that even have anything to do left with the business. And I'm the only one that's actually in it. So interesting. But that's how we got into it, man.
There you
10
go.
years.
It's crazy. Funny how that works.
Yep.
All right, and so give us a little bit of a intro onto what you do, because what you do is very, very unique.
Yeah. So what we do, we started in construction and we definitely have a focus in it, but we really about 60% of our business is construction, primarily commercial subcontractors that are doing work. The other side of our business we call manufacturing or fabricators or just other. What we do is we are a finance company that provides a loan to businesses that have work in front of them. I like to call that work a revenue cycle. So they have a specific job, a specific project, a specific PO. They're basically doing what they do
Mhm.
for a specific customer or group of customers. And their revenue cycle is in the form of a contract, a purchase order, a master service agreement, or some other type of ironclad, like here's what I'm being hired to do, here's what I need to produce, this is who it's for, and here's how I'm going to get paid. And then what we're comfortable with is assessing that person, that company's ability to do what they do.
Mhm.
If we were able to help provide them the working capital they need to execute just that specific revenue cycle, that project or the amount of revenue they could get in that moment, but they need these many certain dollars to pay for cost of goods sold or labor to produce it. We're the lender that can be a source of capital for them in addition to the project itself or that money to help them actually get through it. And it's not factoring because we're not waiting till there's an invoice on that specific project. We're actually looking at the whole revenue cycle in totality and helping them right at the beginning.
Yep. Which is huge for so many in that contractor manufacturing space. You know, it's
Yeah.
very hard to get money before the job starts unless it's a line of credit, SBA, term loan, or something else. And even if it's a, you know, what the traditional working capital is, that typically doesn't work in the services that you lend to, right? So that's pretty cool. Definitely different than what anyone else is really doing out there and on the market.
Yeah, it's
So
funny because the biggest pain point we have sometimes explaining to people what we do differently is, it is so unique that, people are going to obviously relate it to something that they may already know in the lending world. So it's like, oh, I have a contract. Great. How much can I get for my contract? And yeah, we are utilizing your contract as the form of a way to lend to you. But what we're not doing is just giving a chunk of money based on a contract that hasn't been executed on yet. What we're doing is giving you a specific chunk of money so that you can execute on that contract. And if we can help do that, then that means you don't have to take cash out of your regular business, your operating plan, the normal budget to put onto that project. And it should free up a lot of working capital inside your business because you're not taking the stress of that specific project, group of projects, or customers and having to finance it. And so by doing that, we basically become a cash source in addition to the contract to execute on, and there you have more money in your job. What we're not good at is refinancing a bunch of debt, or hey, look at this huge problem I got myself into. How do I get some money to do it? Our ideal customers are customers doing the work that they always do. They're just doing more of it. They have better opportunity to take advantage of it, and they're using us as a way to grow.
yeah,
Your traditional sources of capital just aren't going to give them enough money, or they don't even want to give them any money for the type of industry they're in. And so we're a perfect fit for that.
nice. So take us through starting up, and what are some of the things that you learned operating a business like this?
One of the coolest things I tell people all the time when I'm asked that question is, I love watching and seeing how other people make money. I mean, it's
Yeah,
fascinating. Like anytime there's an application comes in, or a conversation, or a call set up, it's just really cool to see how the world of business and each part of it actually makes money. Whether it's like somebody created this event, like Magic Towel, for example, and they're selling it to Dick's Sporting Goods finally, or mobilization funding, and we are a lending business, or if just construction and contractors and the types of projects, or manufacturers and fabricators. We have a client that makes like bomb proof, blast proof doors, right?
hmm
That go inside government buildings or other structures that are important. And it's like just the cycle of that. So they make doors, concrete doors, but they're all different.
yeah,
Just that's one big takeaway I think is pretty cool, that I like. But what I've learned inside of business, most importantly, if you're going to run a successful business, you have to solve people's problems. So whatever it is you do, whatever it is that you're on this planet with your business to do,
yeah,
don't make it about you. Make it about the customers that you're going to serve. Figure out who they are. Figure out what keeps them up at night. Figure out what their problems are, and truly analyze whether or not your solution, your business, whatever it is that you want to do, you create, whatever you're trying to do, that it really solves their problem, makes their life better, is easier for them, and everything is about them. And if you can create something that does that, then
hmm
you can have a real option, and possibility of creating a sustainable business for you and your team. That took me 4 or 5 years to learn, man. I wanted to get into business, and I wanted to just like be in business. I wanted to make loans. I thought, this is great. You know what? I can make loans and I can sleep at night. I'm going to make money while I sleep. And, none of that is true. Matter of fact, we didn't make any money those first years because we had the complete wrong approach. It wasn't until we focused on solving our customers' problems that we found the right tweaks to our loan program, that we found out who our real customers are, like who are the people that we really can help. Sure, we say contractors, but there's a million types of contractors. There's a
yep,
million different trades. There's a million different sizes working on different projects at different phases of their own business. It took a while to get real specific to that, and it wasn't until we actually thought about them first, and till we could actually make the tweaks and create the loan program that we have now to help the customers that we do. That's the biggest takeaway. I mean, there's a million, but that's probably the most important one. If there's nothing else I could talk about, that would be the piece to figure out first.
All right, I like it. Um, Man, tell us a little bit about structure and like deal flow and how do you go out and get prospective clients?
So the most critical way that we most of our clients is they hear about us through word of mouth. They either see something that we like my LinkedIn profile or content we put out on our YouTube page. Part of what I just talked about, focusing on our customers, is we realize that we have access to all this information related to cash flow. Cash flow is one of the biggest problems and biggest concerns of any business owner. If you screw up your cash flow, regardless of the business, you're going to have a hard time. If
Yep.
you nail your cash flow, regardless of the business, you're going to have an easier time.
Yep.
And construction in particular, and other businesses too, but construction in particular, I'll touch on for now. They have a cash flow cycle just inherently, the way you have to do work, when you get to invoice it, how long it takes to get paid. That is just very, very unique and troublesome and hard to manage. Much harder than a regular business where you can do some work, get paid quicker. And so in that process of trying to understand how that cash flow cycle goes, we realized that if we could help somebody understand the cash flow they have, whether it's in a project or in their business, that would relieve a lot of pressure and solve a lot of problems. So instead of thinking about, oh, you know what, we're going to just make loans and then try to collect them, we said we're going to try to solve a cash flow problem. And one of the best ways to do that was to create a cash flow tool for their projects that provided them access to the information on what they're going to spend, when they're going to spend it, and when they're going to get paid, just based on their own bills and estimates
Yep.
For expenses, who they owe, when they owe the money, and when they're going to invoice their customer, when they're going to get paid, so that they can see what their actual margin is. What are they going to make in profit? What's their cash flow weekly? When if I'm making payroll weekly, I got to pay my subcontractors, my other vendors and suppliers. How much of this money do I really need? We use an example like if you get $1 million contract and you have $800,000 of costs, you're going to make 200 grand.
Yeah.
The easy thing is if you do that right now today and it's over tomorrow, you're going to make 200 grand. The problem is if it takes 6 months to execute that $1 million project and you're going to invoice it 6 times once every month, the real question is how much of that 800 grand do you have to spend and when, or I like to use the word invest onto that project before you actually receive the $1 million, number one.
Yeah.
And number two, is it ever cash flow positive? Meaning, can the project sustain itself?
Yeah.
Or are you investing 300 or 400 grand into it before it's cash flow positive? Or is it only 150 grand?
Yeah.
What happens if your payment terms are 30 days versus 45? What happens if your supplier gives you paid when paid terms, meaning you can order as much material as you want and you can pay them when you're paid? What does that do to the project? So that cash flow tool that we created that you can use for construction or any other business helps them see that upfront in advance, and then they can make amazing decisions off of it. So that's the real value that we provide to our clients first and foremost. And then if that project works for them and they still want to execute it, we can be a source of that cash to help them get from the start of the job to the point at which it's cash flow positive.
Yep. And the cool thing is like with what you do and your metrics, right? Not many lenders and people that we work with actually just have a stamp where you know what it's going to be, right? And so because you're so clear in what it's going to be, it actually allows me to teach the people I work with you with to bid in the cost of their finance.
That's right.
Right. So they could actually build in and make working with you paid for.
Yeah.
And so most lenders don't do that. The only other lender I could accurately do that with is the SBA because I just know what it's going to be when it comes out. And even then there's surprises. At least with you, there's no surprises.
Yeah. And the other thing too is work comes to customers or businesses in certain chunks. It's hard to forecast out. Oh, I want to grow from a $2 or $3 million business to a $4 or $5 million business. Okay. Am I going to do that over the next year? Am I going to do that over the next couple projects, 2 years? When you're taking out a loan for your business, like the SBA loan, you need to think about those things. Like, where do you want to go? How much money should I be able to ask for? What's going to help me get to my growth rates? In our loan, in our loan program, it's just for each project. So you have a project, you know you have the capital, you can knock it out. To your point, you can bid in the cost of that capital to give you the right margins to help you. It's just way easier to utilize as a tool for one-offs when you just don't know what your growth rate is going to be.
Yeah.
If you can get an SBA loan and you want to utilize an SBA loan for all the things that they're good for, you should, and you should for your growth. But if all of a sudden you miss on your mark on your forecast, you're growing a lot faster than you can. That's where we're a great avenue for that. In addition to an SBA loan, you can utilize a project loan, and maybe you only need a project loan for projects that you take on with certain customers because of the terms. Maybe you only need a project loan for projects that are $500,000 or more versus your 30s. So it just gives you some flexibility. It's another tool in your chest to help you grow and execute work without putting a strain on your business or impinging on other loans like the SBA loans you have, or your debt service, or your employees, or overhead. You don't have to borrow from Peter to pay Paul type stuff.
Yeah. And so I always like asking this question: what are some of the biggest piles of shit you've stepped in? Like, what are some of the big mistakes that you've made and how do you correct them?
The biggest piles of shit we stepped in are other people's piles of shit that we thought we were going to fix. That's the truth. I made plenty of mistakes, created plenty of problems for myself, but none of them are as large as thinking that we were going to be a solution to solve a big problem that someone else had that they had already gotten themselves into. In our world, that was refinancing other people's debt. We're not that. That's not what we're effective for. It was someone was on a project, they completely misbid. It was losing money, and it was just a dumpster fire, and we were gonna save the day, and you help them out and get them to help finish that project. But the reality is, when we did something like that, we didn't know what their profit margins were. We didn't know what cash they had left in it. We were just a disaster in helping that. Or the company that we know nothing about how they operate, and we couldn't learn it, but we thought it would work, or you lend too much money to somebody that they don't need because that's what they asked for. See, that project cash flow tool is very effective for us, but also for the client, because that way they're never borrowing more than you need. And you're not borrowing too much money that then gets you in trouble, or you don't, or you're borrowing more and it costs you more than you thought you were, or it costs you more and it's such an impact to your margin. Or worse, and this is the thing that people laugh at all the time, but there's nothing worse than borrowing money from someone, a lender. You do the work, the lender makes all the money, and you essentially worked for the lender. Like, that is a horrible outcome. And as cool as that might sound for a lender, it's not, because it never feels good. It's not going to feel good to a customer. It's not going to feel good to somebody else. And it doesn't feel good to a lender either. No. So I don't ever want to make a loan where someone ends up working for us. So that's why margin is so important, and we analyze it. Yeah. This project cash flow tool I'm telling you about, it's so good for people to use. If we just put it on our website, anybody can use it. You don't have to be a customer. You can download it. It's free. There's an instructional guide and an Excel file that you can download. Or we actually created the actual project cash flow tool on our website. Just go to it, cash flow resources, project cash flow tool, and whether you have POs, master service agreements, or contracts, you could pick which model is best for you, and then you just tab through and answer the questions, and then the spreadsheet gets built on the back end by us, and we just email it to you right away. So you don't even, and then we don't market to you. You put in whatever email you want. We don't know who you are or what you are. We just send you that information, and then you can, of course, call us, and we can, help you through what you're looking at, so you can kind of make some good decisions. And that happens. Man, that happens dozens and dozens of times a week. People are filling that tool out, calling us up, and we're just helping them with their project cash flow. And they never end up becoming customers, or maybe they tell somebody about it later. But it's just a great tool.
Yeah, I love it. What are some of the things that you would say propelled your business forward in a major and meaningful way? Like, what were some of the things that, looking back over your 10-year journey, had you implemented day one, you would probably be 5 or 10 years ahead?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'll tell you exactly what they are. Whether I'd be 5 or 10 years ahead from now, I don't know, because I think I probably learned the things I needed to learn, and my journey needed to be a 10-year journey, for us to get here instead of a
Yeah.
three, I guess. But here's what they are. Number one, I was very focused on trying to make money and do it in a way that was going to be productive for me and our business,
Hmm.
and that didn't produce any of that, but it gave me a bunch of lessons to learn, right? And some of those we just talked about. So it wasn't until really late 2019, so 6 years in, or early 2020, that we implemented like real, true core values: who we are, what we're going to stand for, who we're going to represent, or how we're going to represent ourselves. That got implemented, man, just in 2020, like literally, like what I mean, just in 2020. And they're sitting here. They're on my, they're here on my mouse pad. They're on everybody's mouse pad. We have them over here on everybody's desk. They're all sitting here. All of our core values are laid out. They're all here. So these are the things that we put on people's desks, and that's not the real key. But the real key is we started making decisions off of that,
Yeah.
hiring everybody based on that. We send it out to people in advance. We represent it, who we are and what we are, to our customers that way. But most importantly, we lived that. And it was hard for me to figure out what our core values were until I just thought about what I wanted for myself. And then that's what they became. And then those people that were in line with that left, and we brought in new people. And, our team is so well connected now. I mean, most of the people that are here have been here 3 years. Why is that? Because we launched it in 2020. You know what I mean? So those 6 people we had in 2020 that are still here now, all were replaced with the people that are here now, and they've been here 3 years. The people that haven't been here 3 years are the ones that have added them. But we've added as we've grown. So
Yeah.
that was one. I will tell you, if you have partners or people in your business that are not congruent with what you want to do and your core values, that will really, really, really hold you back. And it did for me too. And so I wasn't immune to that. It wasn't until just really almost a year, maybe 18 months ago, that like we had a very amicable separation. But the partners I had certain desires. We had the same goals, but how we were going to go about getting there and what we were going to do it
Yeah.
wasn't in line, and that impacted us significantly too. So those are the two biggest things I would say. Of course, the third thing is focus, like I said, focusing instead of on ourselves, focus on our customers and solving solutions. Those were the things that catapulted our business from where we were to where we are now.
I love it. That's very, very, very similar to what the journey I went on, and basically the same exact time frame. Everyone knows I used to have a very, very large company, and I rebranded into integrated for the same reasons. So that's
Yeah.
awesome. Uh, what do you? And I haven't asked this on typically the business spotlight because most people don't know, but I know you know. Like, what do you see for, let's say, the next 6 to 12 months uh, from an entrepreneur standpoint, and just the current environment we're in?
I, we had this conversation with our team in our team meeting the last couple of weeks, but I see amazing amounts of opportunity. People are like, "Hey, what's happening in construction? People are getting hurt." Their people are getting hurt, but like the people that are getting hurt are people that were not thriving, but doing okay in an environment where everyone was doing okay.
Yeah.
What's happening now is you're going to have like the best of the best businesses that were really organized. Like, so sticking with construction, for example, construction companies that focus on performance and delivering value more than they do just getting bids and getting projects, they're going to thrive amazingly. Those companies, they're getting better margins now in this environment. They're getting more work in this environment. They're being offered more work in this environment. They're getting better quality work in this environment, better employees in this environment. Why is that? Because when everything is bad or perceived to be bad, people are much more aware of what decisions they're making. That means your general contractors and owners that are doing projects, the projects that are coming out of the ground, they're going to be great projects. Why? Because the banks are only going to do the best stuff right now.
Yep.
So, and those GCs and those clients, they're going to be the ones that are doing the best work. They're going to be the ones that execute. They want to find people that are going to perform. They don't care just about price. They care about performance first. And so the companies that are leaning into that, they're selling on value and execution, not on price. And so
Yeah.
the next 6 to 12 months, you're going to see people fall apart. You're going to hear bad stories about it, but what you probably won't hear, but I can promise you is happening, and you'll see it. You're going to see people having wild amounts of success,
Yep.
um, and we're going to be part of the. We're going to hitch our wagon to the people that we can help grow their businesses, one person at a time, and we're going to grow as they grow. The best way we've grown, honestly, Jonathan, in the last 3 years is the clients we've been fortunate enough to work with, they've grown their business. So where they might have started out with a couple $100,000 loan from us or a $50,000 loan from us, they're now borrowing a couple $100,000 or
Yep.
$500,000 in the same projects, but they're just bigger. Same percentage of the project, it's just bigger. It's just
Yep.
more frequent. And so that's what I see. I see in the banking system, you're going to see banks super conservative, man, super conservative, both in consumer loans, both in business loans. You're like, if you were eligible for a traditional line of credit a year ago, you were on the fence, that little fence has moved to even more conservative. So you're
Yep.
going to need to find access to cash. Um, debt covenants are going to be tighter. You're going to also see opportunities for different types of loans. I would just talk to a big bank yesterday that they set aside several tens of millions of dollars in order to be able to provide loans to the small business community. Small business community to them is being defined as minority businesses, disadvantaged businesses, businesses in areas that they've determined are in their markets, but also troubled. And
Yeah.
so here it is in a climate where there's access to cash that wasn't there before, and
Yeah.
this is a troubled environment. But if you meet those criteria, you have a real option now to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And then I think you're going to see some real cool the people that are really solving problems. They're going to go get the best customers are going to go find those businesses and hitch their wagons to it. People are going to care more about really people who can deliver on what they say more than they are price or other factors. It all depends on what business you're in, but whether it's price or whether it's people or how they feel, they're gonna really pay attention to the people that they can get a good feeling and that they can trust. That's giving them help. That's giving them value. That they look and perceive are working with them, not trying to make them work for them.
Yep.
That's what I see. That's what I think. And candidly, I just gave you what our game plan is. That's been our game plan. That's what we're trying to do.
I'm right there with you, brother. Like that's how I see it. I see it as an opportunity, and the other part of this I see, our banks are already cutting back, right? So I've seen it on lines of credit, I've seen it SBA, I've seen it on term loans where they're raising the guide. I've had several clients that I work with on an SBA basis that have already said, "Hey, my bank cut my line of credit. Can you help me there too?" And I think that that's going to continue just like it did in '08. Like people don't understand lending. When I came into the space in '08, it was in a time where everyone was having their lines of credit shut off, their credit cards reduced. We're
Mm-hmm.
probably going back into that.
Yeah,
Okay.
the line of credit getting termed out.
Yeah. Yeah. And so what that does is obviously it increases the demand here. But what I try to educate people on is how to keep yourself in the best position, how to get everything open and set now, and then move forward. I mean, me and you just mirror each other. You just are a little bit more specific than I am in terms of scope, right, and who your client is. Where with me, I'm just trying to find the round peg and put it in the round hole. Um, what was that?
I said, yeah, no, it's exactly right. Maybe to what that analogy sounds so simple, but really, where people get into problems, where we got into problems when we started stuffing squares in round holes, or
Yeah.
vice versa. That's where you get in trouble. Like, don't do new things, but don't try to be reckless with new things. And let time work on your side.
Yeah.
Be cautious, pay attention, be more disciplined now than you ever have, particularly with your cash. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Make sure you can build up your reserves. This isn't the time to necessarily go out and just like blow all your money and just grow without having a real plan.
Yep.
Be specific and intentional with what you're doing, but the opportunities are there, man. They are
Yep.
there, especially if you're working hard and paying attention to it and you've done the right things for yourself so far.
Yeah. I love it. So, where can anyone find you if they want to work with you, or maybe utilize that site that you put up?
So you can find us at mobilizationfunding.com. You can find all of our resources, the cash flow tool, all of that is right under the resource page on our right on our site, right at the top of Mobilization Funding. You can find me on LinkedIn as well as Mobilization Funding, but LinkedIn is just Scott Peper at Mobilization Funding. You can find me right there on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active on there. Our YouTube channel houses all of our content that's been created, both the podcast, our podcast, the Real MFers is what it's called, a little pun on our name. We're going to be changing that, I think, to construction MFers here sooner or later. But it's Real MFers. You can get that wherever on your podcast. And our YouTube channel covers all the webinars, interviews, just my content stories, sharing information on how to use the cash flow tool or anything else is on there. Very, very good content. And we've been on there now 4 or 5 years, so it's a long library. I also wrote a book on cash flow, Big Book of Cash Flow. This book you can get on Amazon, and you can get also access. There's a page on our website. You can link right to it. But this is 87 pages of the most basic, simple cash flow for business. What you need to pay attention to. What is margin? What is markup? What are the differences? How do you build a cash flow? How do you build a company cash flow, a 13-week cash flow? What's a project cash flow tool? And then all the resources to our webpage are right on there too. So that's another avenue you can go to find us.
Dude, that's solid, man. Thanks for coming on. Appreciate you. Um, I'll give you a call after this.
Thanks, bro. I
All
appreciate
right.
you too. Thanks for having me on. Enjoy,
Yeah, man.
everybody. God bless. You too.